Hi, in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at zsh autocompletion for doas and sudo. Now typically most Linux distributions have a user local bin where you can put scripts that will be picked up by the secure path for sudo. But because I'm on nixos, we don't have a user local bin, so what I'm going to show you is how to set up autocompletion for doas commands and sudo commands for scripts that are in your home bin directory. So first of all, what we need to do is open our zshenv file and set our path. And the way we do that is typeset -U path, capitalized, and then path, not capitalized. We then have path equals, and you can see here we've got home bin followed by path and this bit of code here, and then export path. And what this will do is it will prepend the bin directory in your home to your path. So if I switch across to terminal and echo path, you'll see we have home, username, bin, and then all these directories are Nix specific directories, which will be different on other Linux distributions. But don't worry, you can follow this on any Linux distribution. So next step, after we've set our path in our zshenv file, is to actually set up the autocompletion for doas commands in our zshrc file. So what we have down here is a little bit of code. So z-style completion, sudo, su, and doas. So that will apply to any of those commands. So what I mean by this is we have usually on Linux you have like a, you have a user bin or an S bin or a bin or like a user local bin, and these are all directories that will be searched for scripts. So basically what happens is you can run something like doas change mod, and it will pick up the command by default. Now on nixos, what we've got is a slightly different layout for the directories for commands that are going to be picked up. So if you're on another version of Linux other than nixos, you want to change this line to, like, different directories, user bin, user, S bin, user local bin, that sort of thing, and your home directory, so home username bin. So what this does is this will allow completion for commands after you run sudo or doas. So normally what happens is if I uncomment this and source my zshrc file, in my bin directory, oh hang on, I have a load of scripts, some of which require root privileges. You've got to run them with sudo or doas. So if I now run doas and the name of one of those scripts, oh hang on, what I'm going to do is, let me just come out of this and restart the terminal so it picks it up. It's not picking up that script. So I've got a script called osri, which is used to mount an encrypted container, and if I now type doas os, it's not auto completing it. If I uncomment this line here, and let's just source that and restart that terminal just to make sure. So now if I run doas and osri, you'll see it's actually auto completing it. So what I'm talking about is auto completion for commands that you run after doas or sudo. So sudo osri, you can see it's picking up that script in my bin directory. So again, this is the second step. You need to, if you're on nixos, all you need to do is actually change the username here. If you're on another version of Linux, again, you're going to have to put in the paths you want to autocomplete there. Now the next step is the actual doas setup. So what I'm going to do is actually switch across to my configuration.nix. And don't worry, you can use this setup on any other Linux distribution that supports doas. So on nixos, what I've got here is security equals doa and security.doas equals enable true extra config, and that's it. That's the config. What I'm going to do is actually open up the config for doas, which should be in etc doas.conf. And what we're doing is we're actually setting this up so that we can run any command without a password for our user. Now, what you can do is you can, first of all, let me go through this step by step. What we've got here is permit keep environment, set environment, path, and my username. And what that does is that keeps the environment of my user and sets the environment to path, so it picks up the path that I've got defined. What we've got next down here is allow root to switch to our user, and I use this for a VPN script I've got that I'll get into another video, but basically what I can do is run a command as root and then switch back to my regular user. And the reason why you want to do this is because I've got scripts that will start up like Firefox in a separate network namespace, and I don't want to run Firefox as root, obviously. So I have to run a script as root, but then it falls back to my username when it's actually running the application. Now this next step down here is the nopass, and what we're doing here is saying permit nopass keep environment, set environment path, and then my username. And what this allows me to do is run any command without being prompted for my password. And the reason why we want to do this is because I have scripts and ways of launching Firefox to put it in a separate network namespace that requires running it as root. And what I need to do is, or I have some commands that I need to run, and I don't want to be prompted for a password because they're run from like a desktop file or something. So what this does is this allows me to run any command without being prompted for my password. So I'll show you that. So I've got a script called osary, which I use to mount and unmount an encrypted LUKS container. So I keep all my stuff in an encrypted LUKS container and I can mount it and unmount it. So if I'm on sudo, if I run sudo osary, it's going to prompt me for my password. If I run doas osary, it's not prompting me for the password. And what I want to show you here is something on the next line. What we've got down here is permit no pass, keep environment set, environment path, username command, nixos -rebuild. And what that allows me to do is run the nixos rebuild switch command without being prompted for my password. Now, you can want to make a note about this command option here. So this nixos rebuild is in the sort of default path for nixos. It's in like let's have a look. Which nixos rebuild? It's in run current system swbin nixos rebuild. So that actually gets picked up by default. But what you might be tempted to do is actually allow put in the name of a script here in your bin directory. So as I said, I've got a script called osary. So what you could do is put command osary like that, but that's in my bin directory, and what's going to happen is it's not going to find that command. If I sort of try running that, it's going to give me an error, file not found. And basically what you have to do is put the full path to the script. So home, username, bin, osary, like this. Sorry, it's going over a separate line. But the problem is then what happens is you've actually got to type out the full path to run the script. So what I mean by that is, you see before I was running doas oscillate and it picks up the script. And that's basically with this section here without the command. If you add the command option, you actually got to type out the full path to the script, and then it won't prompt you for the password. If you just put in, if you have it set up like this and you just type the command like that, it's going to still prompt you the password if you've got this command and the full path to the script. So what you'd actually have to do is run the script with the full path, and then once you do that, it wouldn't prompt you for the password. So that's the difference between adding the command option here. So that's why you don't want to add the command option for scripts that are in your bin directory, because you'll basically have to type out the full path to the script. So doing it this way, what it will do is it will allow me to run any script that requires root privileges without typing out the full path. So again, this is an issue specific to nixos because we don't have a user local bin directory. So we've got to put all our scripts in our bin directory in our home. And let's say typically on Linux, what happens is you have a user local bin directory, and that's going to be picked up by the secure path in sudo. And you know, you can just put your scripts in there and you'll be good. The problem with that is twofold. It just means you've kind of got to keep all your, you know, you've got to move all your scripts to user local bin as root, and it just gets a bit of a pain to manage them. So this is also another advantage, because you can keep all your scripts in one place. So finally, this section down here, root as root, permit nopass, keep environment, set path, set environment path, root as root. And what this allows us to do is switch to root as root. So when I run doas su, doas su, you can see I'm not actually being prompted for my password there. And if you run env, you'll see all the environmental variables here. You can see doas user. There should be something that says like actual user somewhere or other. Shell, you can see the shells switch to bash, because on nixos what you can do is you can change your let me just switch across to my configuration and come up here, zsh, yeah, this section down here. So in nixos what you can do is you enable zsh, and you can set some options. Now you can use Home Manager to set up zsh, but what it then does is it manages all the dot files for you. So you kind of if you use Home Manager, it's going to you have to use Home Manager to actually write out all your dot files and everything. So that's why I'm doing it in my configuration.nix. So what we've got here is program zsh enable, completion enable, syntax highlighting, and then this is the section down here. Username shell equals pkg zsh. And we have to have these two sections down here: environment path to link share zsh, and that's for the auto completion, and then environment shell with pkg's zsh, and that sets zsh to be a shell that gets picked up by the system. But what I wanted to show you is that if you can change the shell for all users or just your user. So if you just change it for your user, you can see now that I'm root, I'm actually running the bash shell. If you change zsh in nixos for all users, when you switch to root, you'll be zsh as well, which is probably not a good idea. So that's why I mentioned that. So what I wanted to sort of cover was the sort of the reasons for sort of doing this is it allows you to you can still use sudo, and you can edit sudo and do the same sort of thing as you can with doas, but it's easier with doas. Another advantage that I want to cover is actually you can switch to another user. So let me just come across here. So what I'm doing is in the next video, I'm going to be covering setting up a split route with the transmission daemon and OpenVPN. And I'll cover that more in a separate video, but basically what you can do with doas is you can switch to another user. So this is important because we're running, there's two ways to run transmission. You can either run transmission as its own user, as the transmission user, in which case files will be stored in var lib transmission sort of downloads, or you can set transmission to run as your own user, in which case your torrents and stuff will be downloaded to your home directory, which is more insecure because that means that transmission is running under your own user account and kind of got access to everything. So that's why it's better to run transmission as a transmission user. And so what the issue here is, if you want to run the transmission daemon, you can't just run transmission daemon because then it'd be running under your account and it wouldn't have access to var lib transmission because that's owned by the transmission daemon. Now, if you were just to run this as doas transmission daemon, what it would be doing is it'd be running as root, which is really bad. So what we can do with doas is we can run doas-u transmission, so it's running the following commands as the transmission user, and then we run the transmission daemon as the transmission user as opposed to our user or root. So that's another advantage of doas, and I'm going to be covering this in another video, how we can set up a split route for a VPN. So that's another use for doas, but let's just have a quick recap. So 3 steps. First of all, your zshenv file where you set the path. So typeset -U capital path, lowercase path. Then we have path equals, and we add our home bin, and then this section here is the actual path. So what it's going to do is it's going to prepend home bin to our path, and then we export the path. This capital U, I think, is for unique, and what that means is that you're not going to get duplicate entries in your path. The next step was our zshrc file, and what we've got here is z-style completion, and you can see here these are the commands that we're going to be completing: sudo, su, and doas, and then the command path. And again, this section is run wrappers bin, run current SW bin. That's nixos specific. So if you're on another Linux distribution, remove that and replace it with the directories you want to auto-complete, which may be user bin, sbin, user local bin, and then your home directory. And then finally, what we've got is our doas setup. So again, this is the configuration.nix, setting up doas on nixos. Security doas enable true, extra config, and that's the config. And again, this is the config for doas, which is in etc doas. First of all, we allow our user. You won't need these two because these are this one here is allowing root to switch to our user, and you may not need that. It's just in my setup I need this. This is the one you're going to want. Nopass, permit nopass, keep environment, set environment, path, and then the username. There's 2 issues with this. One, you don't want to use the command option at the end, as I mentioned, because you don't have to put in the full path to the actual script, and you'd have to run doas in the full path to the script so that it wouldn't prompt you for the password. The second thing is what we need here is keep environment, set environment path. And what this does is it will keep the environment set for our user and also our path. And what this allows us to do is also launch graphical applications as our what it will allow us to do is basically you can have a script that requires root privileges, and then it will drop down to your user. And I use this for launching applications in different network namespaces, and you need the keep environment so that it will pick up the X authority file for sort of setting the variable for the display manager so it can launch graphical applications. So that's what you need is the nopass option. And again, don't put the command. So again, if you've got like, some script in your bin directory and you put command some script, what's going to happen is first of all, it's not going to find the script. So what you've got to do is put in the full path, home, username, bin, some script. And then what you'd have to do to run it without being prompted for a password is you'd actually have to run the full path to the script. So home, username, bin, and then some script. And then it wouldn't prompt you for a password. So that's why we just get rid of all of that. And what this will allow us to do is run any script, any command without being prompted for a password. And it's not really a security issue because unless you leave your computer open, unattended, it's not an issue. And then we've got the nixos rebuild switch, which allows me to run doas nixos rebuild switch without being prompted for a password. And finally, we've got root as root, so that when we run doas su, it's actually going to switch to root as root with all the correct things set up, basically. So that's how we can set auto-completion for sudo and doas commands. So again, what this does is it auto-completes commands in your path after you type sudo or doas. So again, in my bin directory, so I've got all these scripts like VPN root. So if I want to start up a VPN, doas VPN root, and when I run that, it's not actually going to be prompting me for a password. It's going to just automatically connect. So it's really convenient using doas, but as I said, there are a couple of issues, and the order of the commands actually matters. So if you start rearranging this, you may find that things aren't working as expected. So this is the skinny. This is all you need to do. 3 files you need to edit: zsh, env, zshrc, and your etc. doas.conf after you've installed doas. And go through and you can set it up. And in the next video, I'll be covering how we can use doas and transmission to put transmission in a separate network namespace or any other application. So what you can basically do is, instead of having all your traffic go out the VPN, you have 2 network outputs. You have your regular output and a VPN. And then what I can do is run a simple script that will put any application, either command line or graphical application, in that separate network namespace. So we can say put Firefox in the network namespace for the VPN, and it will unblock all the sites and everything. We can download our Linux ISOs in double quotes, inverted commas rather, and still have our regular output. So what that means is you can sort of torrent over a VPN and still have your sort of regular connection, so that you can, for example, watch TV shows or whatever being broadcast in your country, because if you're in, for example, the UK and you set your VPN to America to download stuff, you won't be able to access things like BBC, ITV, Channel 4 while you're actually torrenting. So what that allows you to do is torrent and view stuff in your local area as well. So I'll cover that in the next video, but this is something that's just been bugging me for a while. And again, some of this is Nix specific because you've got to put all your scripts in your bin directory as opposed to use a local bin. So that's how we get the auto completion for commands in our bin directory. So there you can see doas, command sudo, I'm being prompted for the password. So that's doas, zsh, auto completion. Again, this was the one bit that actually I found. I can't remember where. It may have been on something like Gen2 forum or something, showing how to do the sort of completion for these commands, but then I had to put in the actual command paths. And again, don't put those paths in if you're not on nixos. It's going to be sbin, bin, user local bin, and your home directory. So that's all for now. I'll put links to all this under the video and hope that helps you if you've been bugged by zsh auto completion not working for sudo and doas. So that's all for now, and again, I'll stick links to all this under the video.